Hi, I'm Peggy Jean, an Egyptologist from Germany, and I'm writing my very first children's book about ancient Egypt, which I'm also going to illustrate myself. If you'd like to follow along on that journey, I'd love it if you subscribe to the channel. I post regular updates on my illustration progress, give you a behind the scenes look at everything that goes wrong, and along the way, you'll pick up a free lesson or two in Egyptology. Today you're going to see just how hard it is to take a complex historical topic and make it accessible for kids, while still keeping it authentic and accurate. What you are looking at is a pencil sketch for an illustration I want to include in the chapter on pyramids. It shows the inside of a burial chamber with real hieroglyphic inscriptions on the walls. I chose this particular pyramid, the pyramid of Pharaoh Unas, for a very specific reason. Unas may not have been one of the great rulers of this time, but what he has left behind has shaped Egyptological research and our entire understanding of ancient Egyptian religion and mythology, right up to the present day. He was the first pharaoh in history to have the interior walls of the pyramid covered in religious texts. All 228 spells and hymns carved into the stone and filled with blue pigment. And here's the part that really gets me. Some of those texts are even older than Unas himself. They were already ancient when he had them inscribed. Nobody had done anything like this before. And before Unas, pyramid chambers were completely bare. These are the oldest surviving religious texts in the world. They describe how the pharaoh ascends to the stars after death and merges with the sun god Ra. He even absorbs the power of the gods themselves to carry their strength into the afterlife. Fascinating and a little bit unsettling at the same time, right? And that's exactly what makes this so tricky to present it for children. I do want to include the pyramid texts because they matter that much, but I made a deliberate choice to only show one wall covered in hieroglyphs, so the complete illustration doesn't become overwhelming. And by the way, these are actual excerpts from the real Unas pyramid texts, with a few small adjustments for space. Now, the pyramid itself was built from limestone, which calls for warm brown, beige and sandy tones. But the hieroglyphs were carefully chiseled into the stone and then filled with blue paint. I needed to capture both of those things, so my process went like this. I started by sketching everything out in pencil. That just makes sense because if I make a mistake, I can easily erase it. And then I use a blue watercolor pencil to trace the outlines of the hieroglyphs. I really like these Faber-Castell pencils for detailed work because they are water soluble, which means you can soften and blend the edges a little afterward. Then came the background, and honestly, that was the hardest part. I spent a long time going back and forth on whether to paint the background first and then add the hieroglyphs or the other way around, okay? But with watercolors, it doesn't really matter which order you chose. The risk of colors bleeding into each other is always there. I had to be patient and let each layer dry properly before moving on. And if I rush it, everything smears and I'm starting over, and this is not ideal, okay? At the very end, I went back in with dark brown and reddish brown watercolor pencils to tighten up the spaces in between the hieroglyphs and to add some depth. And I'll be honest with you, I jump around a lot. I rarely work systematically. Maybe that's what separates me from a professional artist, but I work a lot by instinct and feel. What matters to me in the end is the result, and I sometimes spend a long time getting it right. One thing I notice, these pencils are designed for hobbyists and the color range shows it. The reddish brown reads a little too red and the dark brown pulls almost black. So I still need to adjust the overall color temperature of the surrounding area to make everything feel more cohesive. The focus of this illustration is clearly on the blue hieroglyphs. The pointed roof suggests you're looking into a pyramid without me having to spell it out. And I've deliberately left space around the walls for text, so I can add captions, info boxes, or learning questions right alongside the image in the final layout. I am really curious to see how it's going to look once everything comes together on the page. This illustration is going to be a part of my first children's non-fiction book, Kids and Pharaohs. This is the working title, okay? Which I'm writing and illustrating entirely on my own. It's aimed at readers aged 8 to 12 and it covers around 8 chapters. Life along the Nile, the world of the gods, the pharaohs, the architecture, mummification, clothing, writing and language and symbols. Each chapter follows a consistent structure with learning objectives, fun facts, tasks for the reader, and a personal field note from me based on my actual fieldwork in Egypt. Because I think kids deserve more than just a list of facts, okay? They deserve the story behind the facts. The book launches in German language first in August 2026 on Amazon, and an English edition is planned to follow shortly after. What I'm trying to do with this book is fill a gap that I genuinely think exists in the market right now. There are plenty of beautiful children's books about ancient Egypt out there, but very few that go behind the usual mummies and pyramids approach, okay? And none of that combine academic expertise, original watercolor illustration, and a real didactic concept in one package. That's what I'm going for. If you want to follow this project more closely, I also just launched a Patreon channel where I share behind the scenes updates, work in progress illustrations, and a little more of the Egyptology nerd side of things. The link is in the description below. And if you want to see where this goes, I'd love a like and a subscribe. See you next time.